something about what was going on. You will, once again, I will give you a presentation, so if you're interested in the details, please go and do that. But it's not a bad way to start off thinking about what kind of approach do you have. The idea here is to start off, and I actually spend this discussing also with some of my students, to say, what kind of questions do you have? What are you asking? Are you asking about why is anything happening? How does it happen? Whatever. Are you interested in numbers or whatever, you know, whatever you are? And you know, if you gave this to a bunch of researchers, they could spend a week discussing weaknesses in this framework. I'm not interested. I'm interested in this as a way to start a discussion, you know. So it doesn't matter if you could ask one of these questions up here. I can't do anything with that machine, sorry. Do you need to control, you know, the events? Very seldom in my field, that's very seldom. I think we don't need experiments going on, but you may do that, you know. And is it a focus on contemporary events? Very often for me, the answer is yes. I'm looking at something that is going on now. I'm not looking only at historical data. It's not the only thing, it's not the best thing maybe, but it's communicating, it's a good way to understand. And I'm showing you this one now to say, we do expect students to know some of this stuff. And I realized that some of the students also, when I had this development management program, they're coming from the same university from one year to another. Some of the universities, they have been working only with one kind of approach without discussing, you know, why they are doing that or whatever. So all the students will pick that anyhow. So, you know, if you have a hammer, you know, that's the only thing you have. You'll pick the hammer, whatever you're going to do. So it's also important that we do realize that we have some expectations, and for you and for your own students to discuss with them what are the expectations in here. Silas, how long am I able to continue? 5 minutes. That's not long. So then you don't have to think. Yeah, exactly. May you go on for a little bit more?
Yeah.
Yep. 5
minutes.
Yep. Of course, this is an important part of it. That is that we do expect you to think about what to do. And if I then continue to discuss my experiences, I will immediately come up with you know, some experiences from a lot of students that are not very good at saying no. And that's an experience which is different from Norwegian students. So for example, I now have a student who is, when he is not doing what I expect him to do, he will never tell me, but he will just be silent. And I think for him it's actually, he's not used to send me, to actually forward you a message saying, you know, something came up. So last year he was actually sick for 2 months, and I was sending him emails, you know, every now and then asking, where are you, what's going on? But for some reason that was, I don't know if it was embarrassing or whatever happened, but you know, he couldn't tell me that, you know, I can't do what you would like me to do because I'm sick, I'm away, I can't do that. And of course then we needed to discuss, you know what, it's much more annoying for me not to know what you're doing and why you're not there. And you know, after a while I was starting to be rude, saying, you know, why should I stay, why should I put some effort into this if you are not willing to do anything, that kind of stuff. Ridiculous. So we need to be able to say no, we need to be able to say, I can't do it this week. I need 2 more weeks to be able to do that. My experiences, I actually put a lot of efforts into discussing how to work. I had a student now from Uganda, and I guess I actually tried to figure out what we did there, and I think we spent around 10 hours on Skype meetings discussing the form and expectations on what we were going to do. And I actually think that's a very good investment. Because after that it went excellent. She was a really good student as well. But just to be sure that we had shared the same expectations, that she knew our expectations and that we were able to go in the same direction, it took us quite a while to come up with. But I think that's important, not just to jump into the questions, but also why are we doing this? I'm not trying to be romantic in here, I'm just trying to get students through with, you know, their thesis, doing that as good as possible. So I'm egoistic point of view, I'm very selfish. I would like to be able to finish up within 3 years' time. That adds to my CV as well, you know. So even though we are good friends, that's only plan B on that list. The reason is I would like the students to come through. So I spend these 10 hours not to be nice, but actually to get the students through with a good result. It's very difficult to learn writing style, and that's on my next list. That is to say, if you are connected to a university, try to learn what they do expect. And it's very, very different. If I read, when I'm reviewing papers, it's quite easy to see when papers are from outside the European, American kind of context. There are of course Australia and some others as well. But if you get papers from Africa, Asia, and they don't know exactly the culture here, I think they will very often be rejected, not because the ideas are not good or anything, but because the writing style is so different. So immediately I put on my ideas on how that should be, and I'm saying, oh come on, you're trying to tell, there's storytelling in here, but it's not an academic way of writing, for example. All that kind of stuff. Spend time understanding what is expected on writing style in here. So let's finish up for the last 2 minutes, which will be actually 5 more minutes, but I won't tell too much. That is, what can we learn from this? And let's start off with one question which is important for you guys if you're doing anything. How do you select your supervisors? Because you are also, in my university, and I guess in Sweden as well, you do influence quite a lot on who will actually be your supervisors. My experience there is, in our society, names are not that important. It's not, super professor, yeah, it's nice to be a professor, but it's nice to be something else as well. But most of the students coming from Africa and Asia, they are much more, name spotters than my students here. They will go for Mong Sein in our department because he is the big, he's the known face. And I think that's a good approach. It's an important approach. But I think you should think about how could you actually end up with a good team of supervisors. And we do have, in our university, we do have 2. And here, maybe I'm wrong, but I think the winner had a team with one, senior guy who has done this several times or know everything about the process. Well, maybe my contribution was that it was more important for me to get the winner through in some sense. He's not one more student in a row. I'm not saying Mong is thinking like that. But I'm just saying maybe my engagement in getting him through is somewhat different. And of course then I could learn a lot from Mong as well. So think about, what's a good team? Who would you like? And be sure that you pick someone who you would like to work with. Don't pick, the top shot if he's not interested in what he's doing and if he has 50 other PhD students or anything, he will not put some effort into your work. He may not be a kind person, or most probably he is, but pick someone who are really much interested in whatever you are going to do. And I think that is important. Use your opportunity to influence on supervisors and the choice of supervisors. Sorry I have to rush a little bit, but I think this is something to learn wherever you go. Read the stuff. Read the program documents. Read whatever. If you like to come to our university, read up on what are we saying. Just by reading the documents from the PhD program, you'll get a feeling of what are expected in here. Read the projects, read the theses, all that kind of stuff. It's ridiculous, and my Norwegian students are much worse. They don't read anything of, any other theses. It's ridiculous to sit there and work for half an hour of 3 years if you don't have an idea of what is expected by the end. So go and read that stuff. Read the papers, and especially, of course, read the supervisor's work before you pick them as well, but read them afterwards.
Cite them.
Yeah, cite them. And when you are in the winner's spaces, read your committee's work as well. That is important. Spend time to discuss not only problems, but discuss expectations, forms, all that kind of stuff. What is expected? And this might be easier for me, as now I'm on this supervisor's end of the table. But it's important to ask whoever you are working with, what do you expect me to do? And what is the style, the format, the ideas in here? Try to figure out what are the hidden, knowledge on how things should look like in your society or in your university. I always ask my students to write something very early. It takes me 5 minutes to figure out if this is something to go on with by reading some stuff. Because I need to know, are we far out on, writing style and things like that, or is this somewhat in line with what I do expect? So to write some text, and also back to, Esther, who I spent hours with discussing, format, we spent hours also discussing the text and the format on how to write for our master thesis, which I think is quite important. Because I have very clear ideas in my head and when I read stuff. It takes me 10 minutes to figure out if this could be a top grade candidate or if it's on the other side of the line of the scale based on writing style. Sorry to say, but that's how it is. I'm using Skype a lot with my students not sitting here. And it's much, much better than using emails or whatever. I don't know your experience, but from my point of view, to see their guys' faces, to be able to discuss, to reflect, is not doable without some kind of discussions. And Skype is better than a phone, So that's also on my list. Use Skype or other kind of stuff, of course. I don't mind technology, but I mind, seeing this person, trying to understand his or her mood and discuss a little bit as well. I think that's good. And tell. Don't be too shy not to tell whatever you learn to say no. Learn to tell. Learn to tell, when you can't do anything or whatever. And if you are here and me among or me alone, we will be quite good at telling what we do expect. We do expect something from next week, and if you don't deliver, I'll start to ask why you didn't deliver and try to follow up. But you should do the same. Tell whenever I couldn't expect you to deliver. And don't come and tell afterwards. And that's also quite typical with students from outside Europe, is that they tell afterwards. It's so embarrassing to tell beforehand that we can't do it, so I'll wait as long as possible before I start to tell that this wasn't working. That was more or less what I did, plan.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that was what I planned. I spent some few more minutes. And it's up to you if you should spend 2 more minutes if there are any comments
5 minutes.
or questions. Yeah?
Any question for him?
Is it useful by any means, or what do you think?
Very useful. Please tell me something Scandinavian style of PhD. So far I come to the Edison and other I've seen your and I've done to the Scandinavian something a different style than the UK style.
Yeah.
Please tell me.
Yeah, I can, but give me that book, under that one, there's a book for that. Because one way to answer that question is, of course, to ask you to earn a number, to ask you to read your better. Some of it. Yeah. If you're interested, and I can actually give that references as well, if you're interested in Scandinavian way of thinking, this book is actually quite good, not only on the Scandinavian way of thinking, but also on different models. So it has one chapter on what is expected in Scandinavia, one in UK, one, some other places. And I think that's a good way to start. If I'm going to say very quickly something about the Scandinavian model, I think we are good at integrating students here. So you will be integrated very much as an academic. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I do think that, for example, in some universities in the UK, for example, you're much more left on your own. I think that varies much as well, but it's very different anyhow. For example, I do have 3 students now, and now I have only 2. But I'm, more than 3 students I will very seldom have, because I should spend time interacting with them. So
I can add something on.
Come on.
My experience in the UK is, compared to the Dutch, there is a thorough training the first 2 years for me as a part-time student, first year for full-time students in courses like research design, philosophy, quantitative, qualitative, all these methods, etc. But the thing is, when you are, like me, a part-time student, you are working, you are enthusiastic about your research, and then you get the burden of all these courses. It can be a setback, but you have to go through it, and at the same time, it's a paperwork. They are a red tape society, It means everything should be filled out at least in 5-fold, and then you have to record what are your achievements as first year student, second year, etc. There's a good side on it because I see some progress and I see where I'm lacking with the progress. That is good. So there is, let's say, the monitoring, metering, evaluation part in that system. So be aware of the fact that this is a red tape society, as I call it.
You have some coursework here as well, half a year, but that is, you can pick and choose, so it fits quite well with your, it should fit quite well with your research area. So you will start up, you will enter our program with a research proposal to start off with. That will be discussed while you are doing coursework in the beginning. You'll get supervisors very early, and you are expected to do courses that fits very well with your research proposal. And Siraj is not telling me, kindly that we should stop.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Even that is so useful, I mean, this kind of this. So, next, thank you, Dr. Øystein,
You're welcome.
for your
Thanks
very
a lot.
useful interactive presentations. Now we will have a coffee break. After coffee break, we will be here at 10:50.
And I have to pick the coffee. I'll be back in 2 minutes with coffee. That's what professors are doing at this institute.
You'll be in Skype.
Hey man.
How are you?
How are you?
What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't have money. I have to go to bank and change. So, and they don't open by 8 until 9.
Yeah.
Why? Banks open in my country by 7.
In Scandinavia, everything starts at 10.
10.
Everything is
And close by what?
at 4.
4. Oh.
Banks?
Yeah.
You mean
4.
generally, not banks.
Yeah, banks. And even now, there's a thing.
How are you?
It's not like groups, but
Why is the pictures?
this governmental office, you have to look at the pictures.
You have it? Maybe I give you to copy.
So you send me all of these Shonon's pictures.
And most of mine are just stuff. So I put your pictures of my camera and his pictures and stuff.
No problem, we'll try to. You will have a picture. No, I'm just curious because it's like, it's a lot of pictures and I was wondering. Actually, take a lot more, it's like more than 300.
You took 300.
300 items, it's like pictures.
Let me count mine.
The megabyte is 1 GB something.
Can I copy my presentation?
So, if you have a presentation at this session, you can copy your presentation instead of taking time.
I mean, he took, I took from this camera most of the inside. I took most of that. There's an extension.
Okay. This room is highly connected, so be careful.